Hi, and welcome to the last short lecture from Chapter 10 in your textbook. In this short lecture, we're going to talk about communication in romantic relationships. So, of course, in communication, we have theories and models for everything, and love is no different. So, a social scientist by the name of Sternberg theorized that love, as a thing, is made up of three components, specifically intimacy, passion, and commitment. So intimacy is how close you feel to the other person in the relationship. Passion is about physical attraction and emotional arousal, and oftentimes this includes sex, right? And then commitment is the relational side, the rational side of love. So this is all about the decisions you make, the rational, logical decisions that you make, including whether or not you want to maintain a relationship over a long period of time. So, of course, ideally, we'd have all three of these things all the time in any kind of romantic relationship. And if you're able to achieve all three, then Sternberg says this is what amounts to consummate love. But Sternberg also recognizes that this is a pretty rare combination, to have all these three of these things in equal order. So you'll see here that this is Sternberg's model. This is what it looks like graphically when you chart it out. And so consummate love, as I already indicated, is a combination of intimacy, passion, and commitment, right? But there are other combinations that can exist as well. For example, maybe you just like someone, right? At which point you're really just talking about intimacy. Maybe you experience companionate love, which is about intimacy and commitment. Maybe you're in a relationship with someone and you're just committed to them, but you don't feel anything else, right? You're married to the guy for his money. Well, that's empty love. Maybe there's passion and maybe there's commitment, but there's no real intimacy, right? That's fatuous love. And so on, right? I'm not going to walk through every step of it for you, but you see that these things can combine in different ways with the trifecta of intimacy, passion, and commitment being the ideal. So when we talk about commitment, right, or relational commitment, right, it's a promise that's not always spoken out loud to remain in a relationship and to make that relationship successful. If you're committed to a relationship, you want it to last and you want it to be good. And commitment is both formed and reinforced through communication. It involves both words and actions, right? You have to communicate verbally and you have to do things for each other, right? And I should also point out that the idea that commitment is the culmination of romantic love is a very Western sort of idea, right? It's not one that is held by a lot of cultures in the East, for example, right? So in many countries in Asia, one see that commitment being the reasonable or expected outcome of romantic love. So when it comes to expressions of affection, right, we find, of course, that they're common in romantic relationships and that they're often expressed privately, right? Of course, this isn't always the case. Sometimes people express their affection publicly, which leads to PDAs, public displays of affection, that oftentimes make other people feel uncomfortable. But we know that expressions of affection, both verbal and nonverbal, are helpful. They're useful to relationships, right? So they did studies where, for example, married couples were asked to increase their romantic kissing over a 6-week period. And the people who kissed often had better stress levels, had higher relational satisfaction, and they even had lower cholesterol counts, right? So contact, this affection, expressions of affection, help us both mentally and physically. I should have pointed this out, right? The similar health benefits were seen just with verbal expression. So just telling someone you love them can help their health. Right? Now, affection's weird, of course, and sometimes we engage in what's known as deceptive affection. And deceptive affection is when our feelings and our expressions of affection conflict with one another. So we've all done this, right? Where we're mad at somebody, but we'll still tell them we love them. Well, you're not feeling like you love them at that moment, right? You're probably feeling really upset with them, like anything but love. But you still say it. And when you do that, it's what's known as deceptive affection. And it's important to point out that that's a normal part of a relationship. It's just part of keeping it going, right? Sometimes you have to do that. Now, sexual activity also is an important means of expressing and receiving affection. How happy you are in your relationship is a good predictor of whether or not you're satisfied sexually in your relationship as well. If you're happy with each other outside the bedroom, then chances are you'll be happy with each other inside the bedroom. And it's also important to point out that sexual activity is more satisfying when it's combined with verbal communication. So just having sex with each other really isn't enough. You should also talk to each other and communicate and share affection verbally as well. Now, one of the important things your book discusses is this notion of relational turning points. And these are transformative events that alter a relationship in some fundamental way. So I'm sure you've been through several of these, even at your young ages, right? So some relational turning points, having sex with somebody for the first time, moving in with them, getting engaged, getting married, right? These are all relational turning points. And of course, these are also closely related to NAP's stages of development that we talked about in Chapter 9. Now, of course, in any relationship, there's going to be conflict, right? And so conflict is, the way it's conducted is known as conflict style. And your book discusses three: volatile, avoidant, and validating. So people with volatile, or couples with volatile conflict styles, have really intense arguments. Sometimes they're over things that don't matter at all, right? And each partner views the argument as a contest to be won. It probably wouldn't surprise you to find out that this isn't really healthy conflict style. Avoidant conflict styles ignore issues rather than discussing them. So you're upset with someone, they're upset with you, but you're not going to talk about it. Generally, people with this conflict style, when they do have conflict, handle it very quickly and dispassionately, so without a lot of passion involved. And the validating conflict style is the best. This is where you're openly and cooperatively working together to manage your problems. Both people listen carefully and look for solutions that they can come to together, that they can work on together for their problems. So here's something that I think is important, and I oftentimes tell my students that this is worth the price of the class in and of itself, and that's the idea of Gottman's magic ratio. So the ratio here is 5 to 1. And the idea is that if you want a good relationship, you need to have 5 times as many positive interactions as negative ones. If you can pull this off, right, then you're probably going to have a happy and successful relationship. So what that means is that for every bad interaction you have with somebody, if you get into a fight or you say something unkind to your wife or husband or boyfriend or girlfriend, then you need to do 5 good things to make up for it, right? So it could be something small, just like touching somebody on the arm or smiling at them or giving them a compliment, right? But you got to do 5 of those for one bad thing. I've always thought that bad things weighed more than positive things. You know, you can tell someone you love them 100 times, but what they'll remember is the one time when you were mad and told them you hate them. And the magic ratio sort of proves this out. Again, it's 5 to 1, and this is on the test, so you should pay attention to it. Now, everyone has their own idea of what counts as love. And these are known as our love languages, right? And so we've identified 5 different types. There are people whose love language comes in the form of words of affirmation, people who really look for verbal support and praise. They really appreciate things like written notes and the like, right? There are other people who think of love in terms of quality time, about people being present and available, giving them their undivided attention. Then there's some people who appreciate gifts. They see getting gifts, receiving gifts, and giving gifts as expressions of love, right? Then there are others who think that love is manifest in acts of service, taking out the trash, doing laundry, picking up the dry cleaning, right? All these little chores of life. And then there's some people that find love in physical touch, right? Both sexual and non-sexual forms. With social media, of course, there are both costs and benefits when it comes to romantic relationships. We know that it can help people communicate regularly, particularly if they're living across the country from each other. It can help contribute to feelings of commitment, make people feel loved. On the other hand, being online is not a good medium for addressing serious issues. It can also result in people feeling like their partners are keeping tabs on them, right? Who's this on your Facebook? Where did you go last night, right? Some interesting findings regarding studies and relationships in social media. Individuals who post pictures that include their partners report being more satisfied with their relationships. We know that closely monitoring others on Facebook can be relationally intrusive. And we know that when people feel more satisfied in their relationships, they're more likely to post relationship-related content online. So if you're up there posting pictures of you and your boyfriend and talking about what you did together this weekend, then you're probably fairly happy with your relationship. All right, well, that's it for Chapter 10. Thanks for checking out my lectures.